We have a really fun presentation coming up. Some of my favorite stuff every year that we host. We have Alex Sinclair, the man who has colored everything from Justice League to Green Lantern to Superman Unchained. He colored me, even. Everyone give it up for Alex Sinclair. My joke fell flat.
Hi. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming out.
What are we doing today?
We're actually going to be coloring a cover that was just announced this week for a book called Arkham Knight Genesis.
From the video game.
Yes. It's done by Jim Lee.
Who? You guys heard of Jim Lee before?
New guy, yeah. So every time we do this each year, I tend to kind of go over through the process that I go through, some of the equipment that I use, because those are probably the main questions that I get asked all the time. It's like, what do you color on? What do you use? What do you work on? Computer-wise, this is my laptop. It's what I connect the peripherals to. It's a MacBook Pro, and when I travel, I use a Wacom tablet that's just like this. At home, I have the same company makes a Cintiq, which is the tablet, but the screen's on the tablet itself, and I draw straight onto the screen. And that's what I use at home. It feels more like a drafting table. And for those of you that are curious, Wacom has a booth in the far corner of the convention, and you can go test the products out there. And the last thing that I use, which
that video game controller? What is that?
That's right. So this is a gaming pad. A lot of video game players buy these. They program buttons so that they don't have to find the keys in their keypad. So when they're playing you online, they're kicking your butt because you're the one that's kind of trying to peck away at your keyboard. So I kind of took a cue from them, and I got the same thing, and I programmed different functions into it. It allows me to work without using the keyboard.
I've seen people that have taken like Power Gloves, like the old Nintendo one, and programmed it to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
There it is.
So that's what it looks like. It's got a few rows of buttons, and then it's got different stages that you can change it into to program more than one function into it. So you can do a keystroke, you can do a set of keystrokes. So I've customized it so that I'm moving around basically my right hand, my left hand never leaves this and just hits the buttons, and as I'm working and coloring.
So you never actually touch the computer.
That's right. So I'm never touching the keyboard. I'm on the screen, and that's kind of the way. The laptop actually at home is on the side.
Right.
And I'm just going straight on the screen.
It's very cool. It's a process that we were just talking about, like that most comic book fans have never seen before. Like the coloring, you see people sketch and writers write, but this is some of the most interesting stuff.
Right, and then you end up having to take more stuff with you. It requires a little bit more of a setup.
Yeah.
But thanks to technology, this stuff that gets a lot easier to deal with. Wacom actually has now a computer that has the screen on it, and that's it. You carry the screen and the computer all in one, and so the kind of takes these two things, makes it one.
Right. Very cool.
Yeah. So some of the setup for a file like this is I will get the inked file either from Jim or from Scott, and I'll scan it anywhere from 600 to 1200 DPI. The reason I do it in such a high resolution is that a lot of this stuff ends up getting used for posters, for lunch boxes. Licensing gets a hold of some of the artwork that we do, and it ends up on kids' underwear. So
or like 20-foot walls on the side of our booth.
So we end up having to go really high in the resolution to make sure that the stuff will reproduce nicely. And I scan in a grayscale, convert it to RGB, and I color in RGB mode as opposed to CMYK. Printed color is CMYK, but I color in what's called RGB. I do that mostly because when we started coloring, computers were really, really slow, like deadly slow. And coloring in RGB saved us 8 bits of information per page, per file. So we did it mostly as a time-saving, file size-saving option. And for those of us that started back then, we kind of kept it because we just kind of got in the habit of what RGB allows us to do, because CMYK has some limitations that RGB doesn't.
Gotcha.
So the one thing that we do is if you have Photoshop, if you hit view up here and you hit proof colors, even though I'm working RGB, I can see the colors in the CMYK spectrum. So that I'm seeing how they're going to print, I'm seeing how they're going to get affected by the conversion from RGB to CMYK, which is the last step of the process. Okay. All right. And here we go. Let's try this. First step is what we call the flatting stage. And it basically is me coming in and pecking away, selecting every little thing that you see on here and filling it with a color using the bucket tool. So I'll select the bucket tool, I'll check over here and I have pre-saved colors for the character. So over here is Batman's flesh tone.
You have saved ones per character?
Yes. So as I'm working on, if I'm on 20 pages worth of a book, it's a lot easier for me to have Batman's cowl gray pre-saved so that I can just go click, 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 click. And I'll go through the whole thing this way and select everything so that when I'm done, it looks like this. Okay. And I've gone through and pretty much selected everything out into different colors. The reason I do that is when I'm working on this piece, it allows me to just click once and I've selected everything blue.
Yes.
Or everything gray, or everything flesh. All right, so once I have it at this point, I need to decide what colors I'm going to use for this. That's one of the questions I get a lot is like, do you get to pick the colors? Does someone tell you what colors to use? For the most part, I get to select what colors I'm going to use. I have to observe, obviously, the costume colors, but the script will dictate whether it's night or it's day.
Sure.
Something like this, the lightning bolt will be my main light source, so I have to observe that. And then every now and then, I have to make sure that I'm not repeating a lot of what we're doing, because when you see Batman, it's always at night, and he's most likely on a gargoyle.
It's cooler.
Yeah, right.
But there's an official Batman gray, right? I would assume. I mean, I don't really know. I mean,
I have an official Batman gray, but I don't know if that's what's standard.
I guess with all the different versions of Batman, like the Arkham Knight series, or like Batman, or whatever Elseworlds things we're doing, or whatever. It's too much to maintain just one look. Yeah.
Yeah. So and that's why I mix and pre-save each color so that at least within the book that I'm coloring, it's consistent throughout.
Right.
And then one of the things that I'm known for my style is I use a lot of ambient lighting. So I'll bathe the entire scene in that color that I'm going to be using. So for this particular piece, I'm actually going to use a green to color with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the whole thing. I'm going to use a little bit of normal. I'm going to go for about 10% and start to do that. I'm going to fill it again. I'm going to use a different coloring mode. And little by little, you can see the difference. If I go here and show you what it looked like before and what it looks like now, you can see that there's a tint of green going over everything.
Definitely.
Okay, so that's the equivalent of you walking into a room that's got green lights. Everything you're wearing, everything is going to kind of get bathed in that color.
Right.
So that's kind of what I'm doing. The reason I'm doing that is because the bolt and the lighting I'm going to use is green. So I'm going to use this really strong green light source to work on the piece. All right, and once that's done, I really just select and I start to paint. I've built a set of brushes, as you can see right here.
A set? Oh my God.
Yeah, so those are different brushes that either created or downloaded or purchased online. And they all serve a purpose. So like the one I've selected is the smoke. It's a smoke brush, and that when I start to paint with it, has its own texture on there already that looks like smoke. And I'll work my way through the piece to start to bring that color in.
How long does it take you to, how long has it taken you to collect all these different paintbrushes and buy them all? I mean, you've been doing this for years.
So about 23 years.
Oh, okay.
It changes, and there's brushes on there that I used to use regularly that I
Yeah.
don't use anymore, and it's just that stylistically I'm changing from book to book, from artist to artist, and as I leave a book, I leave some of those tools behind. I leave them there because I know if ever I need to do, if I need a very hard edge brush for a style like palm, like Terry Dodson style. I use a very feathery brush. Okay, if I need that, I know where to go get it.
Right.
And so that's the things that I have to kind of keep track of. All right, so continuing on, I'm going to add a little bit more smoke. I'm going to use a softer edge brush.
God, the speed at which you do this, it's all that control. You're just clicking away.
And this, the big, what's taking the brunt of the what I'm doing is this little speed pad.
Yeah.
So thousands of dollars, $50, right? Okay, so I'm gonna focus on this guy now over here. I'm gonna go over to the knight, and for him, I'm gonna actually work with blue color with him to make him stand out from Batman. And now I'm using a brush that is like a marker tip.
Is this all underneath of the inked layer? Is that how
Yes.
it's not coloring
So
the black?
it's a great question. So if I take the inks off, this is what it looks like.
Goofy.
Yep.
I mean, it still looks pretty cool.
So, and I do that because the inks really are what's dictating what I'm doing, and I want to make sure that I don't affect them until the very end. I'll go through that when we get to it. Talk about how do you really affect the rest of the piece, or how do you mess with the inks to make it look stuff make glow, or what we do that's called color holds.
Do you have like a different color swatch, I guess, or swatches like set for action sequences, or is it just per Batman? It's all these colors, and per Superman it's all these colors.
It's more like suit colors. So I have, if you look here, this row is Batman's colors, and then Superman's base colors, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and Cyborg. And I have a set of brushes that I switch to that's got Harley's colors. So when I'm on the Harley Quinn book, I have a completely set of colors down here.
Gotcha.
That I have Harley, the Joker, and all the supporting cast from the book are on there. So that's easy for me to go back and forth in those make. And then I actually use a lot of the colors up here to create the highlighting and the shadowing, much like this. So these greens are what I use to highlight and shade with green, and so on and so forth. All right, so let me just add a little bit more highlighting here.
Are you using this time to get some work done? Is this?
This actually has been done for a while.
Oh.
I asked if I could do
Yeah, can I just
work stuff. I'd be up here all day.
How long does it take you to do this, per se?
Each page takes me anywhere from an hour to 2-3 hours to do, depending on the artist, depending on the page. So something like this will take me less time because it's one character background and that's it. But a regular interior page by Jim will take me 4 hours because he puts everything down on everybody, everywhere.
Yeah.
Do you do your own flats or do you get someone to run them?
Good question. So what I was explaining about the flat color that when I start from, we call that flatting. And it takes anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour and a half to 2 hours to flat a page. So what some of us do is we hire people to do the flats for us. So I subcontract this to some people and they flat it for me. So I save myself an hour to 2 hours per page per book, which amounts to a lot of time that I can then invest on the coloring side of things. So yeah, there's people out there who make a living out of flatting.
Wow.
And I certainly have 2-3 folks that work for me that do amazing work, and they are my best friends. All right, so let's move on to the foreground here. We're going to start to hit Batman with some highlights. These are the parts of the suit that are going to get lit by the lightning bolt. And the way Jim set it up is most of the light's going to be hitting from this side of his suit.
Would he tell you, like, hey, this is where I want the light to be coming? I mean, you can tell from the lightning, but
And that's it. He's telling me with how he inked it. He's telling me, this is such a strong shadow set that I know the light is really strong behind him,
gotcha.
casting the shadow
I
here.
understand. You guys work so well together. You don't even need to speak.
Sometimes. And then what I'm doing now is I'm bringing a little bit of the blue from the upper corner of the piece to help this side of the arc of Batman pop from that background. And in fact, it looks still a little too gray, so I'm gonna make it even bluer. Pop a little more blue in there. And then we're gonna do some detail work on the armor here.
You said before that depending on the artist, it may take you longer. What artists take the longest for you?
Jim's definitely one of them. I'm working on Justice League of America with Brian Hitch right now, and
Yeah.
his stuff it's amazing artwork, but it's definitely it's very time consuming.
Super intricate, lots
yeah.
going on in the page.
Yep. So there's definitely folks that I've worked with that are super detailed. And I've been on the other side of the spectrum. Like working with Billy Tan on Green Lantern is great in that his stuff is it's not that it's simple, but it allows me to be more painterly
Yeah.
than I would with Jim's. I have to be really technical, very precise. With Billy, I'm a little more free flowing, a little more organic.
Gotcha.
And so I tend to go faster with that because there's less things that I have to worry about or deal with.
How many books do you do, like a month?
I do 3 to 4 books a month.
And what are you working on now for them?
So right now I'm on Justice League of America, Green Lantern, Harley Quinn, and I'm about to start.
Harley Quinn. We have the creative team right over there.
And I'm about to start the issue number 26 of Astro City, which is the 20th anniversary of the book. So that's the.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember we were talking about this.
The one book that I've been on the longest in my career.
Since Chad can't hear us over there, how do you like coloring his stuff?
I love Chad. I love Chad.
He can't hear you.
Chad has a great way of drawing the most beautiful Harley Quinn face in one panel and the goofiest, clunkiest Harley Quinn in the next. and it is so amazing because it's very fitting to the feel of the book and the character. So it's always, Harley feels less like work than any other book.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great. And all the gags, the writing is incredible. So it's almost like it's my time off where I can get to goof around too, because I get to goof around with the color as well. I think we're all having a lot of fun on that book.
How early do you get into the process? Like, do you ever like look at the scripts at all, or is it just all inked pages or even pencils or whatnot?
For the most part, again, it depends. Like when I'm working with Jim, I get to see the pencils, and then I get the inks from Scott. For every book that I work on, I read the script. I read the script looking at the inks to make sure, one, that I'm getting any color cues from the script from the writer, and two, I'm starting to formulate my palettes for scenes of the book, what's going on, to make sure that I'm helping tell that story that the writer started and Jim continued and then Scott went on. So to make it all cohesive.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't want to throw like a happy color on like a death scene or whatnot, you know.
Right. And I want to make sure that sometimes the scene may be a flashback, so I want to make sure that I'm telling that story correctly.
Could you make him a little paler for me? He's not. He's so much tanner than I am, even living in California.
Everybody's tanner than you.
Shut up.
All right. So we're running a little low on time, so I'm gonna skip a couple steps ahead here and show what they would look like rendered. So this is what it would look like at this stage, which is not done. From here, I still have to go do what we call special effects. Glows, the lightning bolt, all that kind of stuff. Which means that I have to start affecting the line art. To do that, I build layers on top of the inks. So if you're looking at the layer palette here, this layer is the coloring, this layer is the inks, and then I have a layer over that where I'm going to start to paint on. All right, and I've done a couple things. I've saved some selections with the inks for the background, and I'm going to do what's called a color hold, which means I'm going to take the black and change it to a color. What that immediately does is it makes the black recede. It really pushes it back and pushes Batman forward.
It almost looks 3D at this point.
Right. So, and that's you're playing, creating that atmospheric perspective. The clouds, even though they may be black, since they're farther back in space, all that air in between Batman and the clouds is going to dilute that black or the value of that color and push it back. All right. So once we do that, what I can do is I can start to paint this lightning bolt that's behind him. And with that, I really just all I do is really just airbrush through. And paint, following what Jim's established here.
And that's just a paintbrush?
And that's just a regular airbrush.
Oh.
So it's
That's so cool.
and then I'll take different tools, different settings, and start to emphasize certain things about the bolt. Make it look
And it's
realistic.
lightning, so it's okay if it's not like perfect, right? You're like,
Right.
it's like the energy crackling off the. Do you ever hide stuff in coloring, like names or anything like that?
No, I can't.
I think we just have a few minutes left.
Okay. All right. So once that's done, I'll add a little bit more of a emphasis to the bolt here. I'll add a little bit of green to the eyes. We'll go back to that smoke brush. And drop these rocks back a little bit. And then I want to make sure that I make the armor look like it's glowing as well, that lightning is such a strong light source that light bounces off of it.
It almost gives it texture.
Yep. And then the last thing is the rain. So I'll take the rain and I'll just start to add the wisps of rain. What's great about this is that much like the rain is in real life, is it never really runs perfectly parallel,
Right.
parallel to each other. So I'm just really going to throw lines. I find some of the rain that Jim's thrown on here, and I emphasize it. And add a few more. And then
It
we'll
just
go-
really adds depth to
Yep.
where Batman's standing.
And then we'll go in here and add a little bit of rain splashing off his suit. And again, these are all brushes that I've built over the years, or borrowed or altered, just to get these effects. So I use this brush that I use for rain spatter. I use for texture on granite too. Same thing with the smoke brush. I use that for texture on asphalt. So I tend to double it up, make it work for me more than one way. Get the effect. So and then when it's done,
That's awesome.
that's what you get.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for showing us. This is awesome. Everyone give Alex Sinclair a hand.
Thank you.
Now you give your computer to the crowd.
Yeah,
That's
sorry.
how this usually works.
Throw it.
Yeah.